How do business leaders and managers bounce back from adversity? How do you build your personal resilience to counter setbacks? I'm here with business leader, politician, and activist Ivan Massow to discuss these issues. In the early 90s, Ivan built one of the first LGBT-geared financial services companies. The high-profile company folded in 2001, despite his considerable last-minute efforts to salvage it. Ivan is vocal on both management and minority issues and has always been frank about overcoming his struggles. You've said that your business failure was the most terrible thing that happened in your business life. How so?
I think as a business person, and I've heard this before from other people, for me the worst time in my life is just stagnation. That not knowing is a horrible time, or actually when a business is doing okay but not particularly doing anything, boredom is what gets me. When a business was crashing and there was something to do which was save it and to limit the downside, I find that quite exciting and challenging, and at least I've got a purpose, which is to save as many jobs as possible and reduce the downside and save as much money as possible and save offices and save brand and reputation.
Most people who have overcome adversity will find themselves slightly more empathetic. Does that translate into daily business life?
Yes, yeah. Also, I kind of sit with people a lot more now, right through to the most basic jobs, leaf sweeping outside. I know it sounds silly, but right to every kind of job, so that I think it's important that your staff understand that you take a real interest and real pride at all levels with everything that happens in the business, and that everything's important. And small stuff, especially the small stuff, the way customers are dealt with, I think that's probably almost one of the most important things, but it's the most commonly overlooked.
You did go through a several-year-long period of introspection. You retreated to Spain, and you came back into business.
I did.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Can you talk about who helped you when you were, let's say, going through a rough patch as a manager and as a person? Who did you turn to? What resource did you draw upon?
I turned to someone called Richard, who's a business mentor. I always think it's important to have both mentors and mentees at the same time. People who rely on you because you, and the people who you can rely on at every level.
Do you continue to mentor?
There's one or two. They're all a bit grand now. That's the only problem. They've all got a bit grand themselves. And so it's kind of, you feel a little bit embarrassed pushing them. There's one in particular who I've taken right from student through to running quite a big business now, a car firm, and now he's got all sorts of apps and things. And I'm worried slightly with some of the directions that he's spreading himself too thinly, but of course it's getting to the point where it's hard to tell him because he's almost more successful than I've been.
Are you going to allow him to make mistakes?
I have to, unfortunately, on this. I can't, because there's a point where you have to allow people to you can only sort of say nice things and be there for them. It's a bit like an alcoholic when you're dealing, it's a very similar thing when you're dealing with people with addiction, dealing with business people. You have to be very, it's attraction, not promotion. You have to be very careful about the way you give advice and be there for them and still allow them to make mistakes.